Take a look at this map made by one commercial IT company. Countries are coloured based on the strictness of their internet censorship. The redder the colour, the more severe the control. Reddest of them all, unsurprisingly, are China, Iran and North Korea. Who knew? Well, we've already discussed China's state censorship in our video about mainland super app WeChat. Everyone knows that Western apps like YouTube and WhatsApp are blocked there, but in Iran, just using a blacklisted VPN or posting a photo on social media without a hijab can lead to a prison sentence or get you a corporal punishment of 70 lashes. North Korea doesn't even have internet as we know it, only the state-controlled Kwangmyong intranet. But someone else is breaking records for the number of new restrictions. It's Russia. Each year, rankings bring it closer to other red champions like Iraq, Myanmar, Turkmenistan and Pakistan. Makes it seem that the next logical step would be an entirely closed, ID-accessed internet. But what if I told you that such a country already exists? With caveats, of course, but Russia has a worthy competitor. This country created 2 versions of the internet. Verified users get the full version, while everyone else only gets a censored, stripped-down one. The censorship went live on July the 25th, 2025. And that country is the United Kingdom, a country that consistently ranks highly in internet freedom ratings, all while people are getting arrested for their online messages. The rate is about 30 per day, nearly 11,000 citizens a year. The government's warning is clear: think before you post, period. It sounds like a digital prison no better than that of Iran or China. But is it really that simple? Before we dive into the story, we'd like to ask you to subscribe and make sure your notifications are on. Our new channel is just getting started and we'd love for you to be a part of it. The ID-accessed internet can be traced back to the tragedy of one young British schoolgirl called Molly Russell. On the evening of November the 20th, 2017, 14-year-old Molly Russell and her family had a dinner and then watched a TV show, a typical end to the day for most working families. According to her mother, everyone acted completely normal that night. Despite this, the next morning, Molly's parents found that she'd taken her own life in her room. Contrary to stereotypes about troubled teens, Molly had many interests and hobbies and led a fairly active life. She was a positive, happy and vibrant young lady. The coroner, however, concluded that the girl was suffering from depression and experiencing negative effects from online content. The main sources of this harmful content, according to their report, were Instagram and Pinterest. Out of 16,000 posts on Instagram that Molly had liked, saved or reposted, 2,000 were related to suicide, self-harm and depression. The child psychiatrist consultant on the case claimed in court that browsing this content had made him lose his sleep for weeks. The algorithm drove this girl into a loop of madness with crazy content like 10 bookmarks about depression you might like. It's a ghetto of the online world that once you fall into it, the algorithm means you can't escape it and it keeps recommending more content. You can't escape it. Those are the words of Ian Russell, Molly's father.
I have no doubt that Instagram helped kill my daughter.
After the tragedy, he became the leading activist pushing for internet regulation. We'll talk about him in a moment as this fight took all the way to Parliament. The London coroner who investigated the girl's death in his report listed 6 following reasons that could allow this history to repeat itself. 1. Online platforms don't have a separate child and adult modes. 2. There are no age checks during registration. 3. Platforms do not moderate content unsuitable for children. 4. Content and ads are automatically selected for a user by algorithms. 5. Parents lack tools to control the content their child consumes. 6. A child's account cannot be linked to a parent's account. And just like that, 1 year later, this one private report in a personal case leads to the passing of the Online Safety Act, with particular attention to the points we just read. But before we start, if you're watching this video, it means we've challenged the algorithms, on which, by the way, we'll talk about later. By sharing this video with friends, you'll help us win this heated rivalry. Enjoy. On October the 26th, 2023, the Online Safety Act comes into force. As always, lawmakers say the aims are pure: to protect children from pornography and self-harm content. A side goal is also to shield people from bullying, abuse, and hate speech in general. No one doubts that such content should be removed. One of the points off the coroner's list was specifically about algorithms, dubbed an inescapable ghetto. The Act required these services to publish transparency reports. These must disclose how their algorithms work and how they influence users and the content in their feeds. This circles back to the concept of two internets, one for adults and one for children. And here is when it struck British citizens.
That was the fucking news!
Think about it. How can a platform identify an adult? It could, of course, analyze all user activity data and estimate an age group. But that hardly counts for the strict demands of the law. A simple "I'm 18" click is just laughable. The law says age verification must be highly effective. A click won't suffice anymore. Effective methods include verification via your bank, passport, mobile carrier, or, hello to all cyberpunk fans, through AI-powered facial recognition. An internet company with adult content but without verification would face a fine of £18 million. The number 18 looks rather symbolic here, doesn't it? The alternative penalty is 10% of the company's total global annual revenue, whichever value is greater. So Meta, which made $67 billion last year through Instagram, if fined by a UK court, could theoretically pay $7 billion. The Act was passed in 2023, but it's being rolled out in 3 phases. Phase 1 was about defining the illegal content. All the guiding principles and definitions were made final by the end of 2024. In other words, they decided what content is illegal, how to assess the risk of it appearing on various platforms, and what measures companies must take based on that risk level. We're currently in the second phase, child safety. This is the part we're discussing now. The primary focus is securing adult websites, and mandatory passport verification is being introduced everywhere. What's so bad about keeping children away from all the adult stuff, you might ask? Well, as the saying goes, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Xbox players can confirm.
Every single time somebody decides that they want to fuck up the internet or fuck up fundamental freedoms, they tend to use porn, terrorism, children, and just this annoying circular thing.
These are companies that count their profits in the billions, and they turn around and say to us that they can't protect our children.
So, what has this Murphy's Law actually led to in practice? Obviously, an adult website is not the only place where a child can find stuff not suited for minors. Special attention was given to services where children spend the most time: Facebook, Instagram, Roblox, and others. But this means almost everything falls under the restrictions: social networks, games, video platforms, messengers, and even marketplaces. Basically the whole internet. Which means all these services now have to conduct age verification. If a user cannot prove they are over 18, they will see a child-friendly version of the platform. The resulting system looks something like this. Is the account accessing the service from the UK? If yes, has it verified its age? If so, you get the full access. If not, it will be the version for children. Anything adult will prompt you to be sent on a verifier's site that asks you to effectively prove your age. You are watching this video online right now. Just imagine for a moment how easy it is to stretch the boundaries of unsafe content. In fact, it happened right away. Many categories of content were controversially deemed forbidden for children. On Reddit, for example, entire discussion threads on topics like how to quit smoking or how to quit drinking were hidden. Of course, we'd all like to live in a world where no one smokes or drinks before adulthood, but we live in a society. It is understandable why posts encouraging substance abuse should be blocked, but the filter only looked for keywords like smoking or alcohol, blocking everything in one mix. Even stranger with the bans on subreddits about menstruation. Look, of course we don't claim to be biologists or medical experts, but we're certain this topic is relevant for those under 18 as well. Maybe the logic is that you should talk about this with your parents? If we accept that all sensitive topics for children and teenagers are the responsibility of parents, then a law like this shouldn't exist at all. Write in the comments what you think about state intervention in family matters. Is it dystopian or a necessary response to modern challenges? That being said, the ban on these subreddits eventually was lifted, and now they are once again accessible to everyone. When the law first took effect, there were lots of these one-off, controversial blocks like the subreddits or a GIF of SpongeBob or a post about Crusaders. It was flagged as sensitive content. But in the grand scheme of things, one post or even a whole subreddit doesn't mean all that much. In the end, even those restrictions were removed, and services that want to keep the UK market preferably could just comply with the official two webs policy. Just the rules of the game. Same thing applied for video games too.
Oh shit, here we go again.
Steam, instead of spending money on a complex verification system, came up with a simple but clever method. Games marked 18+ can't be accessed without a credit card tied to an account. A card that you can only get at 18 years old. Rest easy, elementary school students. League of Legends has a 12+ rating, and if you're waiting for GTA 6, well, maybe you'd already hit 18 by that point, I guess. Microsoft simply disabled communication with strangers on Xbox for anyone not of legal age. The obligation to verify age has popped up in all sorts of unexpected places. Spotify also had to organize highly effective checks. If a check finds you're under 13 years old, the account's deleted. So, internet companies face a choice: implement an expensive verification system or leave the market. Big players have enough money to organize it, but small local communities and forums like the Devon Hook Knitting Club are simply forced to shut down. Could there be 18+ content there? Theoretically, yes. Practically, that means they either verify or create a child mode, or close the service. There's even a webpage collecting cases of small websites and forums closing entirely because they lack the funds to comply with the law. So far, it's around 15 sites. This is unfortunate, of course, but the goal doesn't seem to block everyday services used by millions of people. Speaking of fortune, how do British people themselves think about this law? We think, for example, that if you've watched this far, you probably want to like this video to help promote it. Thank you.
What the fucking hell are you, you great gangly fuck-knuckled twat, greasy-head cuntbag? Fuck you!
Passing such a serious law meant the British government had to know public opinion on the matter. The government's position on this issue was laid out in a so-called white paper in 2019, signed by two significant figures: the Secretary of State for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport, and the Home Secretary. The document itself was presented on behalf of Her Majesty's government. Keep in mind, it's pretty central to the discussion. The government's main claim was that 2/3 of adults are concerned about online content, and almost half of them report having encountered hateful material. Right before the law was finally passed, the UK's internet regulator published a survey of 1,400 citizens. According to the results, 71% of citizens believe the law's measures will positively impact children's online safety. 77% of respondents are optimistic that age verification will improve safety. A full 90% agree that it is important for tech companies to follow the regulator's requirements, and only a minority, albeit a significant one, is skeptical about the possibility of actually enforcing these rules. And we're just gonna trust government pollsters when it's implementing a new censorship law like that, right? Exactly. Here's a different picture and a less biased research source. Sure, it's clear that most people support the idea to verify age on platforms with potentially harmful materials like self-harm, of eating disorders, etc. Don't we all need to think of the children? Ask a respondent directly, would they agree to upload their passport? And then the situation becomes far less clear-cut. Most people said they're willing to hand over their personal information to messaging apps and social networks, but nearly as many are completely unwilling to share any data. Unsurprisingly, only 14% of those surveyed said that they were ready to upload their ID to adult websites, while 40% of respondents assured that they never used such sites in the first place. Right. Jokes aside, the problem here is obvious. Hacks and leaks of user information are already a known issue. Imagine how easy it would be to blackmail someone if you knew their specific preferences. It turns out more than a half of those surveyed believe this would end in state censorship of content. Another interesting point, only a third believe the Online Safety Act will effectively achieve its stated goals. The conclusion is paradoxical. Age verification on websites is approved of in principle, but people are not ready to share anything personal. Everyone fears leaks, censorship, and doubts the effectiveness of restrictive measures in general. Anyone has any idea why people have concerns over the effectiveness of these measures? Remember the two webs scheme, first condition if the user connects from Britain. If you saw our video about censorship in China, you should be aware on how to make your life easier. Of course, the solution is simple. Make the service think the user is connecting from any other country where the Online Safety Act doesn't reach. After July the 25th, residents of the UK suddenly developed a surge of interest in searching for virtual private networks, and even now search volumes remain 1.5 times higher than usual. VPNs also occupy the top spots for popular apps in the British App Store. In Russia, where the government restricts major Western services like YouTube, users found out about them working when sent via Discord. Well, their creative British colleagues discovered that Discord's verification can be tricked using the realistic video game character model from Death Stranding, based on actor Norman Reedus. The algorithm accepted the virtual hero as a real adult, and the verification was passed successfully. On July the 22nd, 2025, British citizens launched a petition to repeal this law. It ultimately gathered 550,000 signatures, placing it in the top 5 of all petitions on the official government website. The state issued a lengthy response. Its essence boiled down to this: the law will not be repealed, but we will provide some support to small websites. Getting a different answer would have been surprising, considering the immense effort authorities put into passing the law in the first place. While working on this episode, we uncovered a whole detective story bordering on conspiracy theory. Follow the trail with us. Remember, it all started with the tragic story of Molly Russell. Well, as it turns out, this story did not become public immediately. It only happened in late 2017. In October of that same year, the UK's Department for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport published an internet safety strategy, a so-called green paper.
Okay, here's the deal.
This consultative document only outlines possible future work on internet regulation. In plain English, officials in it express extreme concern about online harm and violence. They state that, in the name of children and their parents, there must be a regulatory framework for social media, and they essentially ask for the government's opinion. After nearly a year of consultations, the government finally published its official 75-page response. In it, they agreed that social networks must strictly regulate unacceptable content, and that the state should define the conditions for ensuring citizens' safety. The document also listed which tech giants could be the first to face restrictions, and of course officials promised that a more specific white paper detailing new legislation would be published soon. Meanwhile, the calendar had already turned to 2018. Then, if you'd Google Molly Russell tragedy, what you would find is nothing. The story only surfaced 15 months after the event in 2019, and it didn't just surface, it exploded onto the country's media landscape. Molly's father, Ian Russell, was the main voice behind it. On January the 22nd, 2019, the BBC aired a report with a powerful headline, "Instagram helped kill my daughter." The page featured a 7-minute video. It began with footage of a happy girl's life, set to sad music accompanied by her father's resolute statement.
Instagram helped kill my daughter.
His central claim was reinforced just 20 seconds in. In 4 days, the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care directly reacted to it. It is appalling how easy it still is to access this content online, and I am in no doubt about the harm this material can cause, especially for young people. It is time for internet and social media providers to step up and purge this content once and for all. From this point on, Ian Russell becomes the living symbol of internet regulation. He is not just the subject of a one-off report about a grieving father. No, this is a full-fledged campaign. Less than a month later, he writes a demanding letter to the heads of the largest social platforms. He urges them to take combat against harmful content more seriously. What's also important to note is that this was a joint letter, written together from Molly Rose Foundation, which Ian heads, and Britain's leading children's charity, the NSPCC. This organisation provided the girl's father with a platform to speak in Parliament. There, he again emphasised that social networks played a significant role in his daughter's death. He even says that anyone who promotes such content is an accomplice to a crime. Do you see what is being said here? Sure, no one disputes that incitement to violence or self-harm must be prohibited and punished. It's not up for debate, but this is something else. It's a narrative, suggesting there are unidentified actors who encourage suicide. This serves to establish a simple, clear chain of logic. We are creating a law against suicide promotion. If you are against this law, you are in favour of suicide. This is a manipulation, and it's coming even from respectable experts. The campaign continued. Exactly 1 year later, in January 2020, another wave of "the social apps help kill my daughter" narrative floods the media. It's almost a carbon copy, and dates match too. The one new element this time is the involvement of psychiatrists. It culminates with Ian testifying at parliamentary hearings for what was then still the Online Safety Bill. He appeared as a witness, giving evidence that social platforms were not removing harmful content quickly enough. Other witnesses included non-profit organisations and foundations like Ian's Molly Rose Foundation. There is another interesting detail here. This is the Foundation's homepage in 2018, before Regulate the Internet marketing campaign. One-page website with nothing but a bunch of text. The plan was to promote and protect the mental health of sufferers of mental illness under the age of 25 anywhere in the world through the provision of support, education and practical advice, and also support for families who suffered a similar situation. As we can see, there is no goal of pressure on social media at this stage. The focus is on children's mental health issues. In August of that year, the charity's registration number was slightly updated and the wording was tweaked. But its core purpose remained, helping young people suffering from depression and their families. This is what their website looks like today. Sure, it looks modern and professional, but notice the emphasis is squarely on the internet. The Foundation even conducts its own research now with topics like the Online Safety Act, the harms of Instagram, TikTok and others. And although the law has now been passed and is in effect, there was a moment when its approval stalled. On October the 26th, 2022, a debate took place in Westminster. Political forces typically clash there in an effort to delineate their positions.
I wish the Shadow Chancellor would occasionally shut up and listen to the answer.
1 second.
MPs became very concerned that the government had removed the Online Safety Act from the legislative schedule. They insisted the issue must be returned to the agenda and the law has to pass within the current parliamentary session. In their view, the law had already been delayed indefinitely. The brief pause had a simple explanation. On September the 7th, a new government came into power, first under Liz Truss and then Rishi Sunak. They appointed a new Secretary of State for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport, and people in this position were influential lobbyists for the bill. The new appointees took a pause to assess the balance between protecting users from harmful content and preserving freedom of speech themselves. The new secretary did not openly oppose the bill. If anything, she seemed to support it. However, her stance on revising the controversial category of legal but harmful content caused serious concern among the law's supporters. The NSPCC, the charity supporting the Molly Rose Foundation, once again stated that delay was unacceptable and that softening the legislation was not an option when families across the UK are paying a terrible price. And just as the bill's supporters worried about the fate of their project, the coroner, the one who investigated Molly Russell's death, re-entered the picture. A mere 24 days after the new government pulled the bill for review, his report was published. Yes, that report. Its content and motive aligned perfectly with the Act's message and method, and listed points clearly placed blame on social media. I don't mean to suggest that Ian Russell was insincere or, worse, that his daughter's story was fabricated. I'm sure he fervently supports and believes in his cause. But one can't help but notice all the remarkable coincidences. How the Russell family's story went unreported for 15 months, only for a high-quality BBC report to suddenly appear right before the white paper is published. An ordinary citizen gets a platform in Parliament, and the moment the September 2022 Act's adoption is questioned, the coroner's conclusion gets released, almost mirroring the bill's key points. For 5 years it was stashed away until it became handy to push the stalled law forward. It's easy to imagine a scenario where a grieving father could be guided, made to believe that social media takes the sole blame for his daughter's death, not anyone else, including himself. That the future for thousands of children could be changed for the better, and to ensure his daughter's death was not in vain. In the end, while officials wrote dull, incomprehensible legal texts, the public was given a clear, emotional motive. But remember, these are just the speculations of someone on the internet, And the internet, as you can see, is full of all sorts of legal but harmful things. Speaking of which, we've also tried to find the most obvious beneficiaries of this act. Something like a company with a monopoly on user verification. You know how it goes, a law is passed and then business is built on some new, necessary regulation. But that's not the case here. There is more than one company handling age verification. We know of at least 5 that won funding to develop solutions for the Online Safety Act. One of them is even based in Austria. A broader search would likely turn up more. Several other compliant companies operate outside the UK as well. We couldn't identify any clear singular beneficiaries, 1 or 2 companies that would directly profit from new law. Besides, it's hard to call the Act's restrictions outright blocking. All services continue to work for children, just with limited features. They either don't show adult, violent or depressive content, or they simply prevent communication with strangers. Once age is verified, these restrictions disappear, and services return to normal with full functionality. The core idea, shielding children from harmful content, is good, but the implementation, uploading millions of personal data points, seems to make the largest data breach in the country's history just a matter of time. But this approach seems to be part of a wider trend. Roblox, a huge American video game service, is introducing similar verification on its own, without any law. Access to chat is only granted after a face scan, though Roblox claims personal data is deleted immediately after verification. What raises more questions is the attempt to silence critics of the Online Safety Act. Remember a manipulation we brought up? If you're against the law, you support suicide. Here's a real example of that logic from one of the law's key lobbyists. If you don't support the law, you're a sexual predator.
If you are against the Online Safety Act and want to overturn it, you are on the side of predators and paedophiles.
Mandatory parental control is a new frontier in regulation, but the most troubling is the attempt to push through not just child protection, but the regulation of that perfectly legal yet harmful content. Yes, the new government did slightly soften the original bill, which proposed not just hiding prohibited content from children, but also censoring permitted content for adults, meaning anything could be labelled harmful and then restricted. What would another Brit, Orwell, think about such a leap? Start with conventionally demonized topics. Think online harassment or anything pseudoscience. These can cause real harm. Someone might try herb treatment for cancer because he read so in a blog. But once you introduce the concept of legal but harmful, it can be expanded endlessly. Later, you could add content inconvenient to authorities that might harm mental or moral well-being, such as content about the state of the economy. Then calls for peaceful protests or strikes could be interpreted as incitement to unrest. Investigations into corruption could be labelled as undermining trust in institutions. Content from opposition parties or organisations could be treated as foreign interference. The good news is that the new government in 2022 removed these provisions. For now, no legal but harmful category exists. Well, not yet, at least. It seems the internet is now perceived by the state as a source of societal hatred and chaos. The attempt is to make it more sterile, to proactively influence it. Remember that word, proactively. We'll come back to it in another video. Wait, weren't there also prison sentences for speech, remember? We've run out of time for that. If you'd like, we'll make a separate video about it, so stay with us. Share this one with your friends. That will help us find our audience and get in YouTube's good graces. Thank you, and see you in the next one. And I'm the Researcher.